Welcome back, everyone. So this section we're going to be talking about my weekly performance, and scroll past all this. If you want to read it, go ahead. I'm not going to waste your time. In this video, I ended the week up 5.29%, and I do not believe I made any trades in the account this week. This is going to be a rather short update. I don't really have much to say in regards to what I own or what's happened. Grown Rogue's been doing well in carrying my portfolio in its ascension, doing much of the heavy lifting, and that's the consequence of, well, going up in price a good deal over a short period of time, which has been predominantly the reason for my stellar performance over the last 2 weeks. I will note, and this is really the only note I have, is that I wanted to add to OGI, Organigram, but I cannot. Well, so let's address 2 points. Why do I want to add to it? Well, a little degenerate gambling maybe is a good answer. And that degenerate gambling would be involving a binary outcome in the next week, which is the Canadian federal budget update and suspicions of excise tax reform. For those who don't know, many of the Canadian, all the Canadian companies practically, are getting hammered by the excise tax because of how it was structured and set up with false premise and false assumptions in regards to what mid-cycle costs for the underlying products would be, and as a consequence they're paying out of their bodily orifices, trying to keep this PG-13, paying out of their bodily orifices in excise tax, and that's really hurting their business. Surprise, surprise. So with that said, one could bet on positive news coming out as a catalyst to inflect the price higher, and then I suspect if good news doesn't happen, then I'll be happy that I can't buy the dip currently, because it will probably go down a good deal. Now, of course, in the long term, you could say that unfavorable market conditions allow the best positioned players to consolidate the industry and make it to the other end. And then if you presuppose that Organigram is one of those players, then you could say lack of excise tax reform is really going to force the hands of many of the players in the industry to pay their taxes, because Canada wants their money and they're cracking down on these people and not letting them forego not paying their taxes anymore. So I suspect if excise tax reform doesn't occur, then who knows, 20, 30, 40% of the industry participants very well might not exist in a year's time. So if you think Organigram will benefit from that in the long run, then although price falls in the near term by possibly a lot, then it will be good in the long term. So see what happens there. So why can't I buy anymore? Well, because of mandates that I've imposed upon this account. And those mandates are that my cost basis into any specific company cannot exceed 20%. So for instance, I made Grown Rogue, where is it? I made Grown Rogue a 20% position. It fell down to, I think, a 17 something percent position, in which I added more and blah, 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 life happens, and now it's a 24.97% position. So I can't add any more to Grown Rogue, but we're not talking about Grown Rogue. But what we are talking about is thematic industry exposure, which cannot exceed a cost basis of 33% of my portfolio. So no name can be more than 20% cost basis, and no theme can be more than 33% cost basis. So if we go through the numbers, and hopefully things will do well enough that I will never be able to add to any of these positions again, even with the dilutive effects of cash flows coming into my account, which will be the primary factor, I hope, that would allow me to buy any dip that might occur in the future. So Grown Rogue's 25%, we'll just rough figures, Grown Rogue's 25%, Glass House is 5%, so that puts us at 30%. Then Green Thumb is at 3.5%, so that's 33.5%. And then Kronos is 1%, and Organigram's 0.5%. So I'm roughly sitting at 35% exposure to this theme, which means I cannot buy any more. Now, you could say that's an arbitrary, self-imposed imposition, and it is, but it's there for reasons, and those reasons is to not blow up my account due to overconfidence and ignorance and one-off events and unforeseeable black swan events and blah, blah, blah. But I'm not here to argue that point. This is not an ideological conversation about what should be, and it's not about prescriptions or proscriptions. This is a praxeological discussion about what is in describing the parameters and the field in which we're playing, and that's the field in which I'm playing, which is to say that I cannot add to Organigram. So the only way, I suspect, say all these stocks in this industry take a break, consolidate, whatever, pull back a little bit, the only way I'll be able to add to this industry, if I choose to add to this industry, is by the weekly cash flows diluting the percentage of the portfolio that these companies make. And at this point, I would need a few weeks or maybe a month or two of cash contributions to wither away the percentage of my portfolio that these stocks take up. So either these stocks need to radically fall to be less than 33% of my portfolio, or I need a couple of months for cash to come into my account, or theoretically other names I own, such as the uranium space or the offshore space or my gold exposure, precious metal exposure, to rapidly grow in size to also dilute this particular industry. I'm trying to go the whole video without saying that industry because theoretically or supposedly YouTube flags it. So got to be careful how I speak to pander to the those in power. And so either other names in my portfolio, the other, let's call it 65% of my portfolio needs to grow rapidly in order to dilute the percentage contribution of this industry in my portfolio, or I need to wait a couple of months for the cash contributions to dilute the percentage contribution to my portfolio, or these names need to fall a lot to reduce their size and contribution to my portfolio. So those are the one of three ways that will occur in which I could add. Not to say that I would, but for me to be able to. And that's the thought behind that, and that's really all I have to say in regards to this portfolio this week. So, thank you for watching, and until next time.